Hey guys, so I had been planning to show you this on Tuesday, but since I'm very likely not going to be there, I'm just going to do this little video and show you now. So we have the GitHub repository, and I've made like 17 commits to it. Most of those were just me fiddling around and reminding myself how GitHub worked, but I have done about 4 commits where I actually did create a simple GameMaker project shell, basically, and I added a couple basic things to it. So I just want to show you those, and that's these few commits right here. So if we, okay, so here's 12hours.gmx, and this contains all the stuff. Here's some artwork, here's a temporary design document, and here's a to-do list with a few pieces of code that, we'll have to divvy up between us at some point pretty soon. And the way the GMX file works is sprites and scripts and objects and rooms and backgrounds and so forth are all stored in separate files. So if you go down here, we see I've added a bunch of sprites, mostly Kevin's sprites, and I've added a couple more that were generated using his sprite generation tool. And each one of these sprites has a separate file. And this is good because it means we can just use GitHub to sync the files, and as long as we don't work on the same files, then there won't be any conflicts. Although that may not work perfectly because some of the objects, if we're working on them, we may be working on different code which uses the same object file, but we'll have to figure that out. As you can see, here's some recent commits I made. Here's one in which the main project was modified, a citizen object was modified, an overlay object, and a Reaper object, and something else. Those were all modified, so those are the things made in that commit. There are a bunch more commits to make now. I could select not to commit these files, but I'm going to commit all these files, and this will be a new update, which will happen, and it'll be the 18th update in a bit. So while that's messing around, let's go over here and check out the GameMaker project. So basically, this is the way GameMaker works. I'm assuming you've checked it out a bit, but just so we can go over the demo project I made, this is how it looks. So you did that ever update? Yeah, 18 commits now. So this is the way that the project looks. We have a Reaper, walks around. I added a simple movement code, and the enemies move away. Now, lest you think I've been doing my own stuff here, this is the enemy movement is literally 2 lines of code. So the only thing I actually wrote is the player movement code, basically. And I just wrote that to remind myself how the GameMaker language works. I also added this little health bar over here, which goes down. But that's really just a small amount of work. So I didn't do a huge amount of work yet. But we do have a shell where the view in this room follows the player around, which is kind of cool. And GameMaker basically does this for us, okay? This is a health bar generated by GameMaker, and this is a room which follows the player around within like a 350 or whatever pixel border. So let's see how this is implemented. Basically, at the beginning we have sprites. So here's, for example, a sprite for the Reaper up, and you can see here's an animation which I sort of modified a little from the old Reaper sprite. It looks kind of ridiculous, but this is just the Reaper walking. Here's a male citizen going left at 30 FPS. Looks okay. And the way I made these sprites basically is by if you create from a strip, well, I can show you that later, but basically it's not complicated at all. You just go on create from strip, and then you select your file, and you select the width and height of each sprite in the strip, and so forth. And then you can delete the frames you don't like. So here are sprites for the male citizen, a female citizen, an alternate male citizen, an alternate female citizen, for all 4 directions: up, left, right, down. There's a cowering sprite, and it's kind of GameMaker notation to use this SPR prefix. Okay, so I also added a background which I made, which is kind of nifty. It just looks like this, and I also made a slightly transparent version of it, which is kind of cool. Same thing, just transparent. And the reason I did that is if we go into the room over here, okay, so I added objects. I added a Reaper and a couple citizens, but I also added a view view 0. As you can see, it's the only bold view, and it follows the Reaper around. So even though this is a this room, where did I set the room size? Yeah, this room is 1,500 pixels by 1,000 pixels in size, but the view is only 1024 by 768. So that's why we only see part of the screen at one time. We see the view, and the view follows the Reaper around, the Reaper object around this guy, with a 350 border on both the X and Y axes. So that's good. I'm not quite sure what the difference is between these two things, but it doesn't matter. I also set up this cool thing. I didn't know GameMaker could do this. We have two backgrounds. One is a normal background. That's the funky grass or whatever this is, nighttime texture. And the other thing is a foreground image. Now, as you can see, if I disable the foreground, these sprites are their normal color. You know, they're bright. But because I have this transparent foreground image, transparent foreground, I'm actually able to use that to colorize all these sprites, which is kind of cool. I did not see that coming. Anyway, this is a very simple thing. You can navigate around the mini-map and so forth, and this is your basic level editor. This is all GameMaker default stuff. I didn't make any of this. Anyway, so just quickly now, you can take a look at this. It's not complicated, basically. But we have a citizen, and he has events. You know, I set him a default sprite. He's solid, which doesn't really matter, actually. He has a depth. Lower means he's drawn closer to the camera, so to speak. So minus 1,000 would be like the lowest possible thing. There's create events. There's an alarm 0 event. There's a step event. And these are run at various times. Alarm 0 is just, an alarm you can set. If we go on the create event and the control thing, you can just drag code in here. So I would just drag this into here, but I already have it, so I'm going to go in here. And so this is like your random seed the random number generator. Make the image not animate, so the image will not animate. Set the guy to be down, so he points down at the start. This is a random choice between these two values, so it might be male, might not be male. And I set a sprite between 0 and 1, just because those are good indexes to use, because we have a male, like male 0 and male 1. This doesn't matter. And then I have a script. This is a script I made. Scripts are like GameMaker's way of doing functions. And I set, this is some experimental dialogue stuff, which hasn't really gone anywhere yet. This doesn't really matter. But, so the set citizen sprite with self as an argument. Let's take a look at that. What would that do? If we go over here, I made a couple scripts. It's really the same thing from a different direction. Set citizen sprite. So we passed in self as an argument. So obj equals argument 0. This is a GameMaker keyword. With obj, this basically means like pretending that the current object is this. So if we use bmale, that essentially is saying obj.bmale, obj.bmale. It's just a useful construct, the with construct. Look it up in the GML documentation. Anyway, if it's male, then if the sprite index is 0, and if he's facing right, then set the sprite index to SPR male citizen right. If it's up, ditto. If it's not sprite 0, then it's sprite 1, so use the other male, citizen 2 instead of citizen 1. If it's not male, it's female, and ditto for the female sprites. So I just wanted to show you that, just give you an idea of what GML looks like. Step event basically happens every frame. That's all it really means. It's a little complicated. You can add different kinds of events like begin step and end step. Don't really have to worry about that too much. Step just means do this every frame. And this is the AI code I added. It's very simple. It needs to be modified, obviously. But if the distance to the Reaper is less than 50 pixels, then this is like some GameMaker AI thing. Just means like move away at minus 5 pixels per second or something like that. I can't even remember. But this will need to be changed. I just threw that in there to show what, some cool stuff. But if you're close to the Reaper, then basically move away. That's all it means. Alarm 0. Can't remember what calls this. Okay, so like if you wanted to set an alarm, this is how you do it. You do alarm index 0 equals second. This happens to mean 30 times 3. So run alarm 0 in 3 seconds is what this is saying, right? So in alarm 0, it's a dialogue thing. I was just testing some stuff. I have a couple Okay, so if we go on the overlay here, you can see another alarm event. I set a global variable using the global var syntax, which is the only time you need to use a semicolon. And then I just set it to a constant, and I also run an alarm in 1 second. And what the alarm does is it just it decrements the health. It subtracts health unit and then runs the alarm again. So pretty simple stuff. There's also a draw event, which draws the health bar. This is another just default GameMaker function, and it draws it like 20 pixels to the right and below the top left corner of the view. Remember, the view is the thing which goes around the room. Okay, so so that's how I did the health bar and all that. If we just take a look quickly at the Reaper, just make him not animated to start. And this is a bunch of code which is sort of modified from a tutorial, which basically makes it so you can jam the arrow keys and the WSAD pad, and it'll work, as opposed to the directions and the keys sort of overriding each other and it movement being horrible. So you don't need to worry about this. This is just some basic player movement code, and this makes it so the player can't leave the room using the B box thing. And this makes it so that if the player encounters a citizen, if we encounter a citizen, or rather if we're about to encounter a citizen, remember this is running the step event, so every frame. So if X plus H speed means we meet a citizen, then stop moving along the horizontal axis. Again, this is all just a little bit copy and pasted from other people's code because I haven't used GameMaker language in a long time, but you can sort of get the gist of GML just by looking through code snippets like this, which is why I'm showing you this. And the one last thing I wanted to show you was if you go on Resources Define Macros, or if you go on Macros All Configurations, you can see the constants I define. These are GML constants: right's 0, up's 90, left's 180 degrees, down's 270. A second is 30 frames, usually. Health max happens to be 100%, and health unit's 1%, or not even percent, just 1. And the Reaper moves at 6 frames a second, which you'll see that referred to somewhere in here. If we to make the Reaper move, you set speed to 6 basically, and you set image speed to 0.1, which means we start an animation at a tenth of the normal frame rate, I believe. So just check this out. Again, none of it's very complicated. It's really quite simple. It's just a couple hours work here, but I sort of wanted to just make a basic GameMaker template that we could then go and modify and add all that game stuff to, just to kickstart this off, because I've dealt with GameMaker before, albeit quite a while ago. So just look through the code here and see what you think. And just looking at it for a few minutes even should give you a pretty good idea of how it all works, because it's a basic scripting language basically with events.